Hey guys, it's Sarah Joy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I want to show you a cool behind the scenes video of how to paint tile floors. If you remember my video with my friend Kelly from just a couple weeks ago, we went through a tour of her home and showed you in her sunroom how we painted her entire tile floors with not only paint but stenciled tile and how it turned out. It looks really good, and after about 6 months you don't see any signs of damage or anything like that. So I want to show you my tips for how to paint your tile floors and stencil them to make them look great. Here we go. So while there are a number of videos on YouTube about how to paint your tile, I feel like most people just paint a flat, solid color and they don't often venture into stenciling tile. So one of the things that I was looking forward to when we were doing this project is doing a stenciled tile, because we didn't want just one flat, boring look. We wanted the floor to be a statement piece in that really big, fun, open room. So one of the things that we did is we went over to the Floor and Decor store and looked around at all the different tile samples and found a pattern that we really liked and that kind of stood out to us. So then from there, I went on the hunt to go find a stencil to go along with it. Now I believe on Etsy you can find like all different kinds of stencil tile. Luckily for us, we found one that we liked at Hobby Lobby, so we really didn't have to go far at all for that. I'll show you a photo of the stencil that we got. It was actually the perfect size for a tile, so it might actually be meant for a tile floor in the first place. So that's pretty cool, but basically you just want to measure the size of your tiles and then get a stencil that will go along with that size tile. So now it's time to get into the actual project. I will say up front, there are a lot of people on YouTube who have done this project. Most people have great results with it, but the people that don't is because they didn't follow every single step like to a T. And so I would just want to say up front that this was a project that we gave a lot of time to, for one thing. We gave it plenty of time to cure and to not be walked on and to just have alone time, I guess, in the project. And secondly, we just made sure to be really thorough in each step so that it would turn out well. So I think that the reason that we haven't had any scuffs or any damage is because we actually followed everything to a T. So you want to make sure to be able to do that as well, so that you don't run into any problems down the road and that it turns out really great for you. So the very first step is going to be cleaning and prepping your floors. Now obviously you'd think it's no-brainer, but sweep and mop, get all kinds of pet hair or anything totally off the floors. You want to get them really clean, and then that's not it. You want to go over every single square inch with something like crud cutter to make sure that there is no slimy, greasy, any kind of residue. You want it completely blank so that your paint will adhere really well and that there won't be any kind of peeling or patchy job on the paint in the future. So I went over every single square inch to make sure that it was all squared away and ready to go. Once that was dry and all clean, then I started in with the primer. So I used a Kiehl's oil-based primer, which I would recommend to do if it is a well-ventilated area. We had to open all the windows and really air out the place. I would make sure that you do it not maybe the next day before you have company over, because it is very strong and fumey. So I did 2 coats of primer on the floors just to make sure that they were well coated before we started in, even on the paint. Just to make sure that there was that really solid foundation. And in between the coats, I let it rest one day. So in between every single coat of paint or primer that we did during this project, I let it sit for a day, maybe a day and a half before I started in on the next one. I didn't just want it dry to the touch, I wanted it thoroughly and completely dry. So fortunately for us, I was able to take on this project actually when my friends were out of town. They were going on a little vacation for their anniversary, so I just had their house key and I went in and like did the project, and there was nobody who was like, you know, walking through the house and accidentally getting into the paint. So if you don't have the luxury of just closing off one part of your house for like a week while you do this project, maybe it's your kitchen or definitely some other area of your house where you can't just get by with not using it, then I would recommend you doing like a little part of it at a time and maybe staggering your project to where you can just block off certain areas at a time. So you can still kind of like get around, make dinner, whatever. But you can have like a smaller area to do per day and kind of do it that way so that you can give it the proper time to cure, rest, all that stuff. So once I gave it 2 coats of primer, then it was time to go in with my Sherwin-Williams paint. I used a Sherwin-Williams all surface enamel oil-based paint in satin. I used that both for the base color and for the color that went on top with the stencil. The first coat that I did, I just rolled on. It was a light creamy color. And then once that was completely dry, then it was time to go in with the stencil. Now here's where it gets fun with the stencil. As part of the stencil, if I were to do pieces that would connect to each other, I would actually be laying my stencil on top of partially wet paint and then picking it up and transferring it to the other side. So since I didn't want to get paint on the surface side of the stencil, I actually went in like a hopscotch pattern around the room. So every day when I would come back, I would just start on the other staggering pieces, which also helps you to not like paint yourself into a corner while you're doing the project. So I actually would recommend this, just kind of like go at it in pieces. So I would just do one, skip one, do the next, skip one, do the next. And when I'm coming back, do the one in the middle, skip one, do the next, skip one, do the next. And then every day I would kind of fill in the pieces from there. Another thing that I'll say about the stencil is make sure that you're doing really light coats of paint. You're not layering it up and making it super thick and goopy, because you don't want any paint to seep through and get on that back side of the stencil. If you notice that it starts accumulating a lot of paint, which it did a couple times for me, I would take it outside in the middle of the project and put some paint stripper on it and get all of it off, scrape it all off, make sure that it's nice and clean, and then bring it back in. If you want to avoid that from the start, maybe grab several stencils so that you can swap them out and then you never have that paint goopy, sticky accumulation. But if not, just make sure that you keep it nice and clean throughout the project. You don't take long breaks and then come back to it and it's all tacky and you have that mess to work with. You want to keep your stencil nice and clean and try not to get a bunch of paint accumulated on it, because it's just going to make the project harder for you. Alright, so once all of the intricate tile stenciling is done, then you want to go in with a grout paint. So what I did was I just went to the local hardware store and I just looked around at their outdoor concrete paint. So an outdoor safe paint. It was water-based and not oil-based, and I actually mixed it with a little bit of water. You want to get something that is meant for concrete to absorb and that it also has a little bit of color in it. So I actually got one that I was able to pick the color that I wanted to go with it, and so I picked a coordinating color that was just like a little bit darker of a grout to be able to go through and paint. So once the tile was completely done drying, we went in and just filled in the grout with a little paintbrush and then let that dry. Once all of that was dry, now it's time for the last step, which is polycrylic. Polycrylic is also water-based, but it is a sealer to go on top of all your hard work and make sure that it doesn't go anywhere. I, again, got the satin-based finish so that it wouldn't be like super glossy or anything like that. And we put a minimum of 2 coats on absolutely everything. Again, in between the paint drying and me applying the polycrylic, I think we gave it like 3 or 4 days to make sure that it was super, super well dried. And then we gave it like a good, I think, day in between the polycrylic coats. In some of the more high traffic areas, we just put extra on it to make sure that those areas hold up well. And then after that was done, we just gave it several days of not being walked on at all before we stepped foot in that room, just to make sure that it had so much time to dry and to cure. The thing about polycrylic is I don't know if you really need to give it that long to dry. We just wanted to be like better safe than sorry. But polycrylic does feel like it dries like super fast, like way faster than paint. So you're gonna paint it and then 30 minutes later you're gonna be like, yeah, it's absolutely dry. But maybe if you want it to turn out like ours, maybe just give it as much time as you possibly can before you put a lot of wear and tear on it. But I want to show you how it turned out. It turned out super, super well. Like I said at the beginning of the video, it has been about 6 months since we did this project and there are no scuffs in sight. It turned out really, really well, and we're not like treading lightly in that room. We're definitely walking, scooting chairs, like throwing parties in there. So there's definitely a lot of action that happens on that floor, and it is holding up really, really well. So if you are doing a space and you want to do a budget-friendly renovation on one of your little spaces, I would definitely say give painted tile a go and enjoy the result. It definitely updates the space and makes your floor actually a statement piece, which is really cool. So I would recommend it to you. If you want to try out a project, it's totally doable. All right guys, that's it for this week. If you like this video, make sure that you hit the like button and that you're subscribed to my channel. I always post every single Tuesday different interior design videos or before and afters and a lot of fun stuff for you to watch, to be inspired, and to maybe try out for yourself. So I want to make sure that you're a part of my YouTube family here. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed this week's video, and I will see you next week with some fresh content. Bye.
What a wonderful